How do you stay ethical and foster that in your organization?
First, know, are they personal ethics or professional ethics or a combination of both? And also know where the line is between your preference and what the ethics are and how those live. And so what I mean by that is most professions and most industries have like professional ethics that are associated with it. Like therapists are going to have it, coaches are going to have slightly different ones, like a banker is going to have different ones than that. Lawyers have different ones. So there's like ethical concerns that are like really based in the business. And those could also just kind of like the rules of engagement, essentially, that are like, some of them are written down and some of them are kind of like from a social contract perspective. But then there are personal ethics as well, like what matters to us. And one doesn't necessarily trump the other. Like I think personal ethics are super, super important, but one has more of like the legality of working within an industry and like the things you have to do to essentially effectively to properly be an ethical participant in whatever industry you're in versus things that matter to you. So first would be like really understanding those two things. And the second is knowing where preference is. What I mean by preference is all sorts of people, myself included, have things that we prefer. And those things that we prefer are usually based on what makes the most sense to us, what we like, what's easy, what takes the less amount of effort from us. And sometimes those can feel like ethics, but they're just what we actually prefer. And the flip side of that is making things authentic. And when I say authentic, it's about identifying things that maybe aren't as comfortable for us or that are more challenging, that are harder to do, but we get used to doing it and we learn those skills and kind of build up those muscles, because there are times where doing the thing that's most comfortable for us, the thing that we prefer, isn't the right thing. And we actually have to be able to execute on something that makes us feel uncomfortable. Maybe it's a little bit painful or difficult for us to do, but we know it's the right thing to do. So identify what your business ethics are, what your personal ethics are, and then whatever shortcuts that your preference might be causing you to want to take that it's very common for people to be like, this is like an ethical thing, when in reality, it's like, maybe I just kind of want it that way. And I'm taking this grander stand. So when it comes down to like industry ethics, I mean, that should be just like clear conversation point of view, where it's like, here are the regulations, here's, some industries are regulated, or here are kind of like the general rules of engagement. Some again are like social contract things where it's like, well, we should never lie to our clients. That doesn't mean people don't lie to clients all the time, right? And then there are things that are personal ethics. It's really understanding like, what are the industry ethics, what are my own ethics, and having those conversations with people at a peer level and a leadership level, candidly, without pointing the finger. Because the real key here is not about pointing the finger. If you think we're being dishonest, we don't want to come in and be like, you're a liar. Because when we do that, we're putting someone on the defensive. I always encourage people to try and use we language with that kind of stuff. Like we might be positioning ourselves with clients in a way that isn't accurate. That's a great way of saying it. When it comes down to what might just be personal preference, I got to encourage people here. It's like, if you don't like something, it can really feel like it's unethical, but really focus like, is this just something I don't like doing? Here's an example. It's like, sometimes we have to give people feedback, and sometimes that feedback is really, really, really difficult. Most people aren't going to say giving people feedback is unethical, but there's all sorts of times where I see people being like, well, it's unethical for me to go down that line. And I'll be like, why? You're just giving someone feedback and they'll say, well, it just feels this way and that way. And then when you get deeper into it, they're like, I just don't like giving feedback. So I got to encourage you here. Is it just a case of something that you don't like doing, that you need to get good at doing and kind of find your own path? Or is it something you actually think is immoral or unethical? If something's immoral or unethical, you can never get good at doing it because it's immoral and unethical. So you shouldn't do it. But you do, but outside of that, most things in work that feel a little bit daunting or challenging or a little scary, they can feel unethical, and you should really challenge yourself about that. For the other piece, though, you got to stick to your guns. You got to stick to what you believe in. The second piece is, how do you help an organization do that? Not all organizations want to do that. I did work at a place where I felt we were positioning ourselves in the market in like a really dishonest way. Having that conversation with my boss at the time was really tough, because I was like, hey, like I don't agree with this. I think the way we're positioning ourselves is promising people something, but that's not actually what we do. And my boss had a different opinion. And basically, no matter how I phrased it, my boss was like, you're telling me that I'm lying to people. And at the core of it, that's actually what I did believe. I was like, yeah, I actually do think that. And I had to have a real reckoning with myself. I'm trying to change an organization that does not want to change. And by the way, was very successful, like super successful, positioning themselves. It was my personal opinion. And they worked in an unregulated industry. So there's not like regulations there. So there's not real ethics there that would hold them in a position. It was more my personal ethics. I was like, I think this is a lie. Like, I don't think this is true. And I ended up not working there anymore because I couldn't change that. So it is the line between what are industry ethics, your ethics, and then also what might be a little bit of preference versus trying to learn something. And it's getting that right kind of combination, having conversations with people and doing it like in a non-threatening, but super clear and direct way. Like, don't beat around the bush. And then also, if the organization doesn't want it, then being prepared to leave because you can't stay and work in a place that you think is unethical. You just can't do it.